Hi, I'm Bob, and welcome to Between the Sheets, where we look at Microsoft Excel and related technologies. Excel comes with over 400 functions and in many categories, like finance, engineering, statistics, and text handling. But there are still times you might want to create your own custom function. For a long time, that required programming in Visual Basic or Python, and that's a steep learning curve. Also, those languages don't work in the web browser version of Excel. Now, you can still use those languages on the desktop, but using Lambda, which is a lot easier, you can create your own functions directly on an Excel worksheet, and it will work everywhere, Windows, Mac, and web browser editions. Lambda is a function that creates functions. So let's take a look, see how it works. First, here's the syntax. It actually has three modes, each with its own syntax, depending on the stage of development you're in. The syntax for the underlying function doesn't go on the worksheet itself. If you put it there, it's going to throw an error because there's no data getting passed to it. You put the function in the name manager, the dialog box where you create range names. And the syntax is equals lambda, and then in the parenthesis you put in as many variables as you need. I just put in 2 here to make it easy to see, but you could have as many as you want, separated by commas, and then at the end you put in what is the equation that's going to go and use those variables. But you want to test it and see if it works. So to do that, you put it on the worksheet, and that's where the second syntax comes in. So with this, you notice there's 2 sets of parentheses. So you have the lambda function as you defined it in the name manager dialog box, and then you see there's that second set of parentheses, which is how you pass it the actual data. Now there's a third set of syntax, and that's how you actually use it on the sheet. Now in the name manager, you give it a name, and you told it what data it's getting, and this is where you have it do its thing. So whatever your function name is, whatever the input cells are that you gave it, and that's it, just like a regular Excel function that's built in. We have a simple order form here. It takes the price per pound, multiplies by the number of pounds ordered, and produces a total. Pretty basic. To encourage sales, we want to give a 10% discount for any item where the number of pounds is 5 or higher. Now in real life we wouldn't need lambda for this, but this is a simple illustration. With a basic if function down column E, I'm going to say if the pounds are greater than or equal to 5, multiply the total by 90%, otherwise just insert the total as is. So forget lambda for a moment, let's just try the if function. So I'm going to say equals if, open that up. So if that number of pounds is greater than or equal to 5, comma, then we're going to say take that total, multiply it by 90%. If you want to do 90 and a percent sign or a 0.9, either way is going to work. It's up to you. And if not, then we're just going to insert the total as is without any multiplication. Close that parenthesis, Control Enter it. We can see right 3 is less than 5, so there's no discount. I'm going to double click the autofill dot. And now we can see that these are less than 5, so there is no discount. This one here and this one, these are 5 or greater, so we have a discount applied. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this if function just so I don't have to retype it. Don't have to do it, just going to make life a little easier. So I'm going to copy that to the clipboard, and now I'm just going to select and delete everything down. So now I'll use lambda to turn it into a function. I'm going to say equals lambda, and like you saw in the syntax, I need to define my variable. So the first variable is going to be pounds, comma, second variable, I'm going to call it total. I don't want to call it sum because sum is a built-in function, and you want to avoid using names of built-in functions or cell references because that's just going to create all kinds of problems. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste in that if function that I had. I could retype it, but I think it's just going to be easier to paste it in. I need to remove that equal sign though, so it does not create an error. Make sure if is spelled correctly. Now, there's the parenthesis opening up the if function. There's a parenthesis closing the if function. So now I have to close the outer parenthesis for the lambda function. So I want this to be able to work on more than just row 6. So I don't want to have these cell references there, right? So we have these variables called pound and total that we created. So this C6, I'm going to take that, I'm going to replace that with pounds. And D6, I'm going to replace that with a variable called total, and I'm going to do this over here also. Now, if I enter the function as it is now, I'm going to get an error because Excel is going to think, okay, we've got this function that we're defining, we have the variables, but it doesn't know what data to work on. So that's where we use that second syntax. I'm going to open up another set of parentheses, and we have the variables called pounds and total. So I'm going to click, there's pounds, comma, there's total. Close the parenthesis. So I've got there C6 and D6, which are going to substitute for pounds and total and get put right in that formula there. So now I'm going to enter it. There we go. Just like before, you see it's correct. I'm going to double click the autofill dot, and everything works just as it did before. So the next step, now that we know this works, is we need to use the name manager. But what I'm going to do, just so I don't have to retype anything, I'm going to take this entire Lambda function right there. I'm going to select it. Now I'm not grabbing that set of parentheses at the end. I'm just taking this whole Lambda thing, and I'm just going to copy that to the clipboard. And now I can take all of these cells and once again delete all that. So in the Formulas tab on the ribbon bar, I go to the Name Manager, and I'm going to create a new name. So this is where I give the function a name. And this name should be unique. Like I said a minute ago, this should not be the name of any function that already exists, should not be a cell reference. So I'm going to call this disk total. You can't have spaces in the names. And the scope, where is this going to apply? So right now I've got this workbook here. I could put it in just the orders, right? The name of this worksheet is orders, so I could have it there possibly and not in other worksheets. But by default, it's going to be workbook, so that it's going to apply right here. Now, comment. If this is the equivalent of a yellow sticky note, so if I come in later, I will know what they are. So I'm going to say pounds equals pounds ordered, and total equals pounds times price. And you might be wondering, hey, why didn't I just put a hard return there instead of putting a comma? And the answer is you can't insert a line break in this comment box. It's annoying, but the good news is Excel is coming out with an add-in that replaces this ancient name box. It hasn't been released yet, it's still in beta as of this recording, but I plan on doing a video to show it in the near future. Anyway, so where it says refers to, I'm just going to remove what's in there, and now I'm going to paste what I copied in from the worksheet, and I could retype that if I want. So there is the name of the function, disk total. It's going to apply to the workbook, and we have over there what those variables are. So I'm going to click OK. There we are back in the name manager, and again there you can see that function we created, and I'm going to click close. Now we could go and run it. So down column E, I'm going to say equals disk, and there it is. That disk total pops up just like a built-in Excel function. And what I typed in that comment box, that's the syntax. So it's telling us what that is. This is just kind of like you're working for Microsoft. So I'm going to say disk total, and my inputs are C6 and D6, the pounds of total. There we go. Enter it, autofill it, and there we have it. So it's just like it worked the last couple of times, but now we're doing it with our custom function. Okay, you might think it's still unnecessary to create a function just for that, and in the words of Billy Joel, you may be right, I may be crazy. So let's kick it up a notch. Instead of a blanket 10% discount, let's do a sliding scale. For orders of 5 to 9 pounds, we'll apply a 10% discount. For orders of 10 to 14 pounds, we'll apply a 15% discount. And for orders of 15 pounds or greater, we'll apply a 20% discount. I think the best way to do this is using the switch function. So let's do a quick review. The syntax of the switch function, we say equals switch, open a parenthesis, and then we have a value that we're going to check. And then we could apply pairs. We can say if that value equals this first thing, we're going to return this first value. If that value equals a second thing, then we can return a second value. And you can have as many of these pairs as you want. And then once you've exhausted all those, you put in a default value or the value of false. Now, there's a little glitch that we have to deal with, though. The switch function does not work and play well with comparison operators like greater than, less than, equal signs. So we're going to have to fake it out using a true value. So once again, let's delete everything down column E. And let's just do the switch function before we create the lambda. So I'm going to say equals switch. And this is where I use that true value. So I'm going to say true. And now I can say, all right, C6 is greater than or equal to 15. And D6, if so, comma, then we say D6 times 80%, right? Because we want a 20% discount, comma. Now, if C6 is greater than or equal to 10, comma, then we say D6 times 85%, because we want a 15% discount. Make sure that's a percent sign, not an asterisk, comma. And finally, if C6 is greater than or equal to 5, then we're going to say D6 times 90%. We apply the 10% discount. If none of that is true, that means that C6 is not 5 or higher, and we're simply going to put in D6 by itself, no multiplication, no discount. Close the parenthesis. Let's enter it. Okay, that's fine. And let's autofill it. And now we can see. All right, so these, again, these first three, there's no discount, but now these three, you see we do have those discounts applied. Again, to save myself some typing, I'm going to grab this entire switch function. I'm going to copy that. Let's delete everything down column E. And let's go directly into the name manager. So click on the name manager. We're back in there. There's that disk total we created. So now we're going to create a new one. And this one I'm going to call sliding disk. Also, I'm going to apply that scope to the workbook. And also, like before, we're going to say pounds. And now where it refers to, let's remove whatever's in there. Paste that long switch function. Now we're going to nest that inside Lambda. So we're going to say equals Lambda. Open up the parenthesis. And we have pounds, total. And now there's that whole switch function is the third argument. So there's the parenthesis at the end closing the switch function. Let's now close the outer parenthesis for the entire Lambda function. But we got to get rid of these C6 and D6, so just like before. So now I've replaced all the cell references with my variables. I'm going to click OK. Back in the name manager, there's that whole mess. Let's close that. Now let's use the sliding discount function. So we're going to say equals sliding, and there it is, sliding disk. There's the comment that we put in, pounds, comma, total, just like before. Enter it, autofill it, and look at that. So we now have that very complicated switch formula that we put in simplified so that it's just this one simple function, sliding disk, with those two cells being fed into it. Now let's plug in some other numbers. So instead of 3 pounds, so what if we have 10 pounds? What if we had 16 pounds? So now you can see that it is doing that calculation. Another benefit of creating functions with Lambda rather than with programming is you don't have to deal with security issues. You can send workbooks containing Lambda functions to other computers, and you don't have to save the file as macro-enabled, because these are functions, not macros. So until next time, my name is Bob, and this has been Between the Sheets.